Om Mantranam Jiva Bhuta Tulya Smrita Shakti Rupaya Tatahina Vadarohe Nishfalaha Sharda Bhavat Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. The ancient seers and sages of India, recognizing her as the imperishable Shakti, the Devatma Shakti, existing everywhere and in everything, whose streaming particles of living intelligence permeates all, without which all the tattvas would be like clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness, existing in the multitude of words, and the meaning in all the mantras and their secret, whose very being is the essence of non-duality. Om peace, peace, peace. Om te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan devatma shaktim swagunayar nagudam yaha karanani nikilani tani Kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. Om shantihi, shantihi, shantihi. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the ancient rishis of India beheld the Devatma Shakti existing everywhere and in everything, who, though veiled by her own modes of nature, was nonetheless one and indivisible, and who had been indiscernible to them earlier due to the limitation of their own intellects. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. So here in Sharada Ramakrishna Vivekananda Loka, SRV associations, after a lapse of some 3 weeks, 3 Sundays, in which we usually participate in these big 3-hour classes of Dharma, Atmagyan, higher teachings, Paravid, the different levels of non-duality and qualified non-dualism, and dualism too, that come forth as offering in any kind of noble endeavor like that. We meet again here after our recent visit to the Portland Ashram in Oregon and down San Francisco to see Bhavatarni Ma, our wonderful Dharma facilitator down there for so many decades. And where we had 2 classes, you might have seen, or access, yes, 2 classes on a Saturday and Sunday last. And then we engaged in a retreat on Patanjali, on 8-limbed yoga. And we put it side by side with the Sadanga yoga, the 6-limbed yoga, and that is in the classes. And in the retreat then we put side by side dissolution of the mind stream in yoga, according to Patanjali, and the Vedantic version of dissolution of the mind stream, side by side on 2 charts. And then after reminding ourselves of the tattvas, which are without rain if you don't have streaming particles of living intelligence in them, as the name of this class suggests. We went through them all, 24 or 25 if you include the cosmic mind and the fourfold mind to make it a 5-fold mind. And we looked at that, and then immediately went to dissolving the mind stream in yoga, and how that starts off with a lower cut, you might say, how there are some antarayas, vikshepas, 3 states of lower mind, klistavrittis. If you are used to Sanskrit and Indian darshanas, you know what I'm talking about, these obstacles and impediments to spiritual life, which or rather get thee behind me kind of information in Vedanta. They start, that Sadanga yoga starts right at pratyahara and concentration, and sort of figures that maybe you have your body position, a single ekasana is sufficient, and your breathing process together, and you've got the 5 yamas and 5 niyamas, which are obvious moral, ethical, and deeper teachings of the Dharma, things like no violence visited on any living thing, maybe not even on any insentient thing in some cases, like Jainism. And Ashteya, no coveting of the goods of others out of jealousy. I was reading the calendar today, given to me by one of my students, Swamiji Vivekananda, flip a day, every day saying calendar, and he was saying in that jealousy is the worst passion of all, and that must be gotten rid of. So in the Upanishads we find out right away that you should not covet the goods of other beings, rather you should be happy, Krishna says, for other beings when they attain things, and hopefully you can also give it a positive turn and direct them towards beautiful attainments that are beneficial to all. As we just chanted, may all of us expand our minds and learn from one another and learn from the great teachers, because here in this world the spiritual path is more razor's edged than in other worlds. Other worlds here means inner worlds, not outer worlds, as we'll find out as we look into them today. I created 2 new charts, actually 4 new charts, but 2 of them will be shown in this series, and another 2 will get shown at the seminar at the end of the month, which is called Extracting Essence from Everyday Life. Is that essence Brahman? No, because it can't be extracted. So we must be talking about something else, like streaming particles of living intelligence. Again, the title of this 2-class series. 2 classes is not enough to give to it, but it is an evolution and a furtherance of that book and subject where I brought it up in the Jnana Matra. That is basically the particle of living intelligence itself. Here we're talking about streams of them, like rays of light, you might say. The first compound coming off of the word, or off of the light of Brahman. First thing coming out is these streaming particles of living intelligence. Living intelligence, fire of yoga, those are phrases that were dropped as hints by Swami Vivekananda to us in his letters and his talks, in order that we become aware of things like prana, tanmatras, psychic prana. And I think all of those can be taught and specified, but they need to be connected to streaming particles of living intelligence, the sentient side of the tattvas. Vak tattva, if you want to put it that way, that which is under the specific direction and overseership of the Vakdevi, the mother of the word, which is why I chanted 2 nice slokas from the scriptures, tantras and so forth today, about these beings who looked deep within them and with their focused intelligence were able to find the mother of all intelligence and connected the word to the mind, found everything in the mind, connected that to the intelligence, found everything of a higher nature there, connected that to this early principle of individuation called the ego, which in itself shouldn't have been a negative thing, but happened to lose itself in Maya. And then hopefully ripen that and connect it to the witness consciousness. We've been talking a lot about witness consciousness lately. It's on both of those other 2 new charts I created, a little bit more about them. So these are all inner tattvas, more along the sentient side of things. If you were to look at the original systems in India, like Kapila's Samkhya Yoga, you'd see Purusha and Prakriti side by side. It sometimes gives people a little turn who wants to see everything as one, or not 2. But however, the separating the wheat from the chaff, which needs to happen here in your discrimination process, really begs you to make at least a subdivision between the sentient and the insentient. Later on, that became known as the real and the unreal in advanced Vedanta. As if you really couldn't merge the 2 into one, or even take words into the mind, into the intellect, into the ego, and into the witness, unless you started out with this separating the wheat from the chaff process, or God from Mammon, as it was called. Judaism, Christianity, they were the teachers, the great ones in those religions too, were aware of this need for what we call viveka here in Vedanta land. Neo-Vedanta, we sometimes call it now, which has been brought here to us by Swami Vivekananda in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions, of all things, so as to inform everyone of the Adidaiva Vidya. If you know that wonderful word, Adi means original, like these streaming particles would be the original particles coming off of the word. Daiva means divine, and Vidya means higher wisdom, so the original divine wisdom that was taught by beings who lived in ancient times in the East, before there was even a word India to designate that subcontinent. It was called Bharata, the eternal. They were thinking in everything of, oh, here's the eternal, here's my chance to see it in form. You see, so seeing it in form is kind of the point which helps me to segue out of what might turn into be too long of an introduction and get right into the subject, since we only have 2 classes. And so this is the chart for the 2 class series. There you see it. And what I was just saying reminded me of this sloka from the Svetashvatara Upanishad. It should be known that the primal energy of the one Supreme Being assumes various forms. Assume is a good word, instead of identifies with or gets lost in. That divine substance is as subtle as the tip of a hair, divided and subdivided thousands of times. Consisting of that self-same irrepressible force, the seers and the gods realized it in former days and fully identified with it, and verily attained immortality. The great old Rishi Svetashvatar and his line of illumined children and grandchildren and so forth carried this this teaching, gathered it at one time, because it's a more recent Upanishad. So looking at some of the more ancient Upanishads, looking back into what their conclusions were, like we do now with Swamiji, back to Shankara, and back earlier than that to Patanjali, and earlier than that to Krishna and Ram and so forth. We look into the teachings of the past, which are really here in one moment and eternal. Aparashaya, they call that. It's a matter of eternal existence, not of coming into being and going out of being. It may get covered and uncovered, but as it gets covered, just like clouds covering the sun doesn't get destroyed. It's still present. So how thick are the coverings is a good question to ask in Vedanta, in my mind, and how thick is the covering in the collective mind today? These conventions that we're all battling to pierce through, to keep ourselves in the knowledge that our Father and I are one, are here with the streaming particles, our Mother and we are one. So this is a way of connecting back, and you can see, since this segues me nice into the chart itself, that another quote can explain this and get us started. The primal substance of all the worlds, subtler than tanmatras, subtler than atoms, reaching from the heart of Mother Kali to the aspiring minds of living beings in the earth loka, the intelligent particles infuse all manifest things with the very essence of being. Utilized by the yogis for enlightenment and transmission, this unseen increment of pure awareness gives even inanimate objects their existence. So the seers would follow these streams of particles out all the way as far as the lower lokas on earth. And they're doing it under the regimen of their own intelligence, their own will and force. But insentient particles, insentient objects are too made of that very same intelligent particle. They're appearing here as objects, and this gross earth and the 5 elements and so forth. So if you follow the evolution of living particles, streaming particles of living intelligence, then you will get to this place where you'll see the subtle essence become the gross substance. And that's what you're seeing the final effect of here. You're living amongst that. And it's really very similar, the advices say, to coming from the dreaming state into the waking state and going back into the dreaming state and then going back to deep sleep. But that's the Advaita Vedanta way of sum totaling it all for you in a very easy way, and also making it more personalized for your individual consciousness, your own 3 states of consciousness that you go through. And as you look around and broaden your mind scope to understand things, you see that the whole collective mind is going through that on earth, and then maybe you will bridge that and start to see deeper into subtler realms, where the tanmatras are, where your ancestors went, where the gods are, and where the seers are, like Maharloka and Taparloka, where they keep their subtle bodies or their causal body. You'll begin to find out more about the different kinds of intensity that these particles imbue all things with. And basically, again, if you start off with that sentient, insentient, wheat, chaff, real, unreal, God, mammon, understanding, then you won't trip up along the way and mix yourself with nature. You'll always know that you're the witness, which is another word we're using for that, sakshi bhutam, the witness of phenomena, instead of getting sucked into phenomena, as so many people have done and are doing constantly. That's where you get into studying the rebirth wheel, samsara, and the limitations of the ancestors and their return to earth to have children of which you become a part of, and give rise to more offspring, progeny. All of these are mentioned in the Upanishads as something more to study from a distance rather than necessarily getting involved in. So that's why I said the word associated is a very good word, or assumption is a good word. Where did you come from? Oh, I assumed form back some many lifetimes ago, and this is my lifetime, and I'm about ready to dissolve. And I'll see you back home as one immaculate, indivisible ocean of pure conscious awareness. That's the home, the refuge of Shiva. So that also moves us on in an introduction to this chart, because this chart will play as the main centerpiece for our 2 classes. And I'll take apart a few of these things, not all of them, because there's more to see. But this needs straightened. And let's get it all straight before we begin into it. So really very difficult to find anything more subtle than the word. Every great teacher seems to have mentioned it and has included it, whether they taught on it or maybe they didn't teach on it because of the limited understanding of the culture at that particular time. But if they did teach on it, then they had a group of very qualified souls around them, and by the Divine Mother's own sweet will or intention, this was destined to form a great stream itself. So I think all religions come from living streams of intelligent particles. And groups of souls come from that. So from that high perch down to all of this also being vibrating with particles, as we know now, thanks to our physical science, then it behooves us then to look at the origins for things. Try and take a step back in to our subtle body, not just our brain, because that's where Western psychology has gone. And there's a lot of pitfalls there if you don't have a guide. I think Western psychology needs a guide there too, because you didn't hear past lifetimes talked about by Western psychologists very much, if at all. And so it's still something they're considering a theory maybe. But India has been living on this relative truth as being a relative truth for time out of mind. They bring it back with them when they teach it. It's just second nature to them. It's amazing if you'll spend time around them. Even the Hindus of today, it's just ingrained in them. So they might not even know about it that much, but their lives are so much different than most beings. And they're usually not transgressing Dharma like Western people are. Making errors and mistakes and going to war and splitting particles for the wrong reason. I think if we used the splitting particle metaphor and lent it to the electron microscope of our focused mind, if we had our own set of streaming particles, our own, instead of scattered mind, as the father of yoga says, it became very concentrated mind. Instead of vikshipta mind, it becomes ekagra mind, one-pointed. If we had that in our own possession, then we could look inside, see all of this, and split it and reveal what's in it. What's in it is peace, love, light, higher wisdom. And at the very foundation of it, the Divine Mother herself, if she'll show it to us, you see. If she'll just show herself to us. That's a rare vision, even for yogis and seers, the scriptures say, to get a vision of her. She's so hidden in it all. And everything is her expression. So that, as an overall description of this chart as a centerpiece for our classes, is what you're seeing here. Out of the word comes this light. I've often said in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. evidently spoken by Lord Jesus. Those are three things. And it's a triputi. In Vedanta, we would hear a teaching like that, and we wouldn't snap to and conclude that origins are real because of that. Oh, there's a beginning. Just because some great saying said that. It'd say, in the beginning of all created things, there's a beginning. Apparent, assumed. And then it was with God because it had a connection, so right away you're giving it a foundation, which in some schools, if even in India, you don't get that foundation. Like in some schools of Buddhism, oh, there's no underlying substratum, they say. It's just rising and falling, rising and falling. But that shunyata theory has become worn a little thin, Vivekananda said, in these days. The Purnyata theory, or the Mahayoga theory, is coming forth now in the Neo-Vedanta as being something that even Lord Buddha talked about. As Vivekananda said, he used the word pragyaparam, so supreme wisdom. He used that word. And so he used that to describe Buddha nature. So if Buddha nature isn't the foundation underneath everything, then we ever that a dancer needs a stage, and this is a huge dance going on. This is an intercosmological dance with many, many worlds, and if you're only focused on the outer world, you'll miss the show. You'll miss most of the show. It's like just going to a big fair and only spending all your time in one room. See, when there's so much to see. So that's the way the World's Fair was too, and Vivekananda visited it. So you have to resist this temptation to become a frog in a well, he said. Come out, my brothers and sisters. You're frogs in a well. You're just a frog in a well. You need to jump out and see what's outside this little world that you've sequestered yourself in. Broaden your mind. See what's there. And hopefully you're going to do it with your own heap and helping of intelligent particles that you've gathered inside of your mind. See? So, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. If you get to the final part of that triputi, then you have formless reality. Oh, the Word just got sucked back into the ocean of Brahman, like an iceberg melts in an ocean. And then it will come forth again as another iceberg at the next cycle of time. And this is going on infinitum. Everything is eternal is the three-word mantra for that. Everything is eternal. There's no such thing as the non-eternal except in terms of change. So the changefulness of a thing, even of a mind, became one of the things they started looking for in order to help others. So, Om Asat Vidyate Bhavo Na Bhavo Vidyate Sataha was the way Krishna put that in the Gita. So he wanted to explain to us that the unreal never is. So that must be a facade. It must be an illusion. It must be a mirage in a desert. The real never ceases to be. So if the real never ceases to be, the unreal has to be in it. And then Ubayarapi Drishantos tu Aniyos Tatvadarshibhi continues on. The wise ones, they concentrated on both the real and the unreal. They didn't just concentrate on the real. That's what you need to do as a practitioner for a while. You don't want to go towards the unreal yet. Get thee behind me. That's a practice phase. Just like the word has three phases, and you have to understand them. You have to know when you're qualified to be able to focus on the sun or on Mother Kali. See her back here behind, her two eyes. She's set behind everything, Brahmakala. She's the blackness of infinity. Hair black, skin black. Black bees are buzzing in and out of her hair all the time, drinking the nectar. Souls, that means, are being born, created, her precious spiritual children. She's got a rich symbology, and she's also terrible, to behold at times. So to the devotees, she's the primal guide. To the asuras, she's a terror. To the ripe egos, she's that which is to be sought after. To the unripe egos, she's their death. See, and they believe in death. To those with living particles, streaming particles of living awareness, she's the source. To the materialists, she doesn't exist. So, if you're looking at the entire cosmos, not just the furnace, the basement. Sri Ramakrishna said, if you go put on your white clothes and you're going out, see your informal clothes, just before you leave the house, I forgot to turn off the furnace downstairs. So you have to go into the furnace, get that switch, and flick it. But it's all sooty down there, dusty, cobwebs. That's the earth he's talking about. If you have to go down into the furnace room, that's the basement of the cosmos. There are 6 worlds above that are so fine. One is more prevalent with the subtle tanmatras that have been mentioned here of nature. That's where the elementals are, the nature spirits. And beyond that, then you've got these heavenly realm, lower heavens of the ancestors. The only soot there is wanting the desire to come back to the furnace. What happened to you that you want to go back there? Particularly stripped of your living particles of intelligence. Or if you don't have the fire of yoga that makes the furnace basement of Burloka, the earth, seem nothing in comparison. You can burn the karmas of that which has no karma, as Valvahut says in his Amritam, Jnanamritam, Samarasam. See, the supreme rasam, the greatest delight, pleasure is gotten by them who know the nectar of non-dual truth. Jnanamritam. You see, so these are all streaming particles filled with Jnanamritam, if you want to say. So if you want to give a quick overview of this, we had to talk about the foundation of it first, Brahmakala. First thing coming out there is bijams, seed words. Then you see things like the Trinity. You know the Trinity because we often sing about, if we add some musical notes, because these notes, when they're better in tune, have to do for now. So these notes are all tanmatras, you see. There's the music, there's the instrument, and then there's the cups off it. Can you distinguish the notes floating in the air as they hit your ear? Oh, that's a C. No, that's a B. Oh, that's an F sharp. See, these are all like the particles of music, and they are right here unseen on the physical level. I mean, so how about this, for instance? Is it pleasant? See, that's dissonant, right? Call that a dissonance. But you can leave those 2 notes in there and surround it with other tanmatras. Now is it painful? Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Deva Maheshwara, Gurur Deva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this is all about the Trinity. Guru Brahma, Lord Brahma, who is Yo Brahmanan Vidadati Purvam, Yo Vaye Vidamsya Prahino Hitasmai. Atma Buddhi Prakasha, Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham. Basically it says that one supreme entity, call her Brahma Kala here, nameless and formless, out of which the Trinity sprang at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, and who came along and vouchsafed and gifted the Upanishads to Lord Brahma, who is an eternal bridge to immortality, who resembles fire that is lost and consumed its fuel. I go for refuge to that Supreme Brahman. For refuge, you see. So Lord Brahma received the bijams, all the great teachings, straight from her at the beginning of the cosmic cycle, and she'll take them away from him, strip him of them again at the end of that cosmic cycle, and they'll go back to abeyance. No birth, no death happens there. No change happens there. No action happens there. No movement happens there. It's lightning swift, like you visiting a dream last night and not knowing where it came from or how it ended. It just rises and falls, if you want to put it that way. So bijams, we'll go into that in a minute. Jnana matras, there's a stream of jnana matras themselves. See, all these streams running through this darkness of Mother Kali, like red flowers floating on dark waters. Like the poem goes in India. It's like streams of blood flow down her scintillating black form, like beautiful red flowers floating on dark waters, he says beautifully. So, and so all of this streams constantly in her form, all contained by her formless form. Brahma Kala, it's a good word for that. It's mentioned in the scriptures as one of her precious names. Trinity is there, bijam's there, Jnanamatram's there, solar systems, suns, planets, all come out of that. Avatars and luminaries come out of that. Solar dynasties come out of that, like the one in which Ram came from, traced all the way back to the earliest days, as it says here. You know, back in those early days, they identified with her and streamed outwards toward the earth from a solar dynasty with its great grandsires, like Svetashvatar there, and then merged back, you see, just like your in-breath. There it is. It's gone. Just like in a breath, it all happens all the time. When I first saw the word Om, I saw that worlds were coming out of it, Sri Ramakrishna said, and then getting merged back into it. But as I witnessed it, I saw that no time was passing. It was just like this great dream that Divine Mother's having, like you're a dream. You're a dream of the divine. So you could connect yourself to that dream and find your way back to deep sleep through meditation. See the seeds for all this. Notice the streaming particles of living intelligence. Take them for your own, and merge yourself into the ocean of Brahman again, into her, the Brahma Kala. And this becomes the essential move in the chess game of Maya. To transcend Maya, not to get lost in it. So these two are very important streams coming out of that. See, then ancestors are a stream, a little less desirable. Solar systems, suns, planets come out of that. Mountains, forests, rivers come out of that. Sometimes we explain this as nadis, like nerves running through your arm, see, or canyons running with rivers in them through the earth. When the Advaita looks upon those, he's just seeing the body of Jagat Devi, she's the Earth Mother, and how she, with living particles of intelligence, formed these worlds, all out of bijams, out of words, out of vibrations, if you want to put it that way. And then is the overseer of all, you see, and the home of refuge for all too. Shiva knows that, see. So there's other bijams, of course, like Aim and Hrim, right there in her third eye, you see. She's got a pendant there and one up here. So she's got these, she's mother to all the words. See that? I mean, probably one of the best ways of saying it is to sing it in one of these very unique flights of spiritual music. Monopoli Bhajakari Icha Hoi Torjayachari Guru Data Mahamantra Divanishi Matakori Monopoli Bhajakari. O playful mind, meditate on the mystery of Kali using any method of worship you please, or simply breathe day and night her holy name as the living seed, particle of transforming power planted by the Guru in your heart. Consider the act of lying down to sleep as offering to her. Allow your dreams to become radiant meditations. When you walk through the countryside or city, feel you're moving through her scalp. Trees are her hair. Everything are particles coming on her divine body. All sounds you hear are her natural mantras. And they repeat spontaneously as the whole world worships her, most without even knowing it. She constitutes the letters of every alphabet, like particularly these letters, see, in the bijams. And each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. So that's that pregnant with power, the Vaktatra, in every word, every letter. And that goes inward, not in alphabetical form outward, like towards phonetics or linguistics or something. I don't really care how many languages you can speak. I just wondered if you can use one of them to express this truth. That's what's important. Just get one language and then talk about the meaning of words, sentences, and books and tomes and libraries, all manifesting out. But where are the seed words to these? It's like a bell has a strike to it. Tum is in the bell, but you need to strike it to bring it out as a vibration. That's a stream of sound, just like I showed you. See, everything takes on significance then. And that also takes on significance if you understand it properly. I am overwhelmed, Ram Prasad says. She's so wonderful. She shines fully through every living creature. So whatever food or drink I take, I offer it as oblation into sacrificial fire and meditate intensely on her encompassing reality. See, our own founder, Lexixon, put this into beautiful English. It's one of Ram Prasad's Zen songs. So I don't think there's another song comparable to that anywhere that explains this particular facet, the Vaktatra, the letter, how from a vibration everything springs forth and comes back. Just with a song like that has inspired people to look into the Word or look into the Trinity in, that's the key word. And have a vision, an inner vision of those things. And then if you're going to get lost anywhere, get lost there, in contemplation of her divine reality. Which they're telling us is wonderful, wonderful. Well, to finish the introduction to this chart, because we have some things to do with it, here are some of the bullet points how to describe an intelligent particle, or streams of them. It's the original primal substance. Vivekananda said it's the first compound off of Brahman. That is, reality is Brahmakala, or Brahman, you see. But the first compound of that is knowledge. And so that knowledge is this primal substance, because it infuses everything. Lack of it renders everything as helpful as clouds with no rain, we just chanted. So she's a living intelligence in everything. And if she can be uncovered, then life is blessed and proceeds without a hitch. One can express oneself here in the Leela and go back to the Nitya and forget the Maya. See, this is how Sri Ramakrishna, my final and most mature opinion on the whole matter is a being comes from the Nitya into the Leela and returns to the Nitya. What's that, sir? What did you say? I didn't hear you say anything about Maya. The Maya is not real. The unreal never is. The real never ceases to be. So focus then on the real, and if you must, detach yourself from the unreal and see its workings, so that you always are teaching yourself the lesson of detached witness consciousness. How to go into any world, even the upper seven. As the chakras have poisons and nectars, and all 7 of them have poisons and nectars. People have gone to a higher center without being prepared for it. There are books written on it in the 60s and 70s. And they got disoriented there and came back and didn't know what to do with themselves. Got a little imbalanced there, you see. So that's the poison in this center. You have to, by enlightenment dawns on the mind by stages, with the help of the guide of the Guru and the scriptures, then you get your own experience. That's called Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava, or Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. 3 great sources of practice. Second one is, it's the first compound of consciousness, quoting from Vivekananda. Third, infilled with Vakdevi Tattva. So this is, Tattva is a word that could either be used as an insentient thing, or it can be used as the Brahman. So this is Vakdevi Tattva, this is her principle, her own precious ability. As we just said down here, the seers and the gods realized it fully and identified with it and attained immortality. So they didn't identify with unreal things or changing phenomena or questionable things. They saw the foundation of everything, saw its living particles like rays from the sun, got aboard one of those rays and had Mr. Toad's Wild Ride all over again, back and forth. Ever heard of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride? Well, think of that in a spiritual way and you'll get the gist of what I'm saying. Capable of penetrating all things. So there's no barrier that Mother can't pierce through. So if you've got her bijam in her mantra, then you should use it to penetrate through to the truth of everything. See the essence of everything, called samyama in yoga. It's a combination of your concentration, meditation, and samadhi. What are you waiting for? You can't have samadhi, Shankara says, practice having samadhi. Assume the position, as they say sometimes. So the spiritual police want you to assume the position and get you out of your divine vehicle assume the position. Have you got samadhi yet? Well, I'm trying. Here, watch. You see? That's that word assumption again. You see a bowl of wax fruit across the room, but you don't know it's wax. It makes you go there and take a bite. Well, oops. But since you found your mistake, that unreal things are not satisfying, then that causes you to go out and buy a bowl of real fruit and enjoy it. How Sri Ramakrishna talked about that assumption. You see, use everything as a bowl of wax fruit first to learn the lesson, and realize the truth of it by finding the real. Like moon reflecting in the mud puddle is not the real moon, but if you touch it and see it vibrate, see the firebrand phenomena going on in it, as we talk about in Gaudapada's Advaita Vedanta, then that's not the real thing, but it will cause you to look up, to find the real thing. And this means to look in, to find the source of all these vibrations. It's capable of penetrating all things. It's the very essence of wisdom. Jnanamatra. It's swarupa. Paruta arta shunyanam guninam api. Prati prashavaha, Patanjali says in his sutras. Kaivalya swarupa pratistam, the steady wisdom, unchanging wisdom in everything. Va chitti shakti iti, belongs to the mother of your thoughts. She's the stable foundation in everything. Try basing all of your thoughts in her now for a while, instead of your ego or someone else's, some other fools broadcasting lower wisdom to you. Find her and dedicate yourself to her right now in this lifetime, once and for all. Get it done. Or wander in Maya, if you will. Or become obsessed with lower knowledge. Penultimate there it says, companion of the fire of yoga. So I'm using Vivekananda's hints that he put in his words and his writings and his lectures, as we were talking about on the way over here in our drive to Kedarnath temple, that he mentioned both those things, particles of living intelligence and fire of yoga. He wanted us to become aware of that. And yes, it is akin to seeing Brahman in everything, if you've had that thought. Why don't we just say Advaitically, well, Brahman is in everything. But we have to follow up saying, but it's not a thing. So what is the essence of a thing? If I'm going to extract essence from a thing, like is the title of our seminar in a couple of weeks, at the end of July here, that you can all watch, then I'm going to have to know that Brahman's not a thing, so I can't extract an essence from it. And then what is the essence? It's the Shakti power moving in everything. No, he didn't say the Maya. He said the Leela. And he didn't say you remain in the Leela. He said you go to the Nitya at the end. My most mature opinion. So you have to assume or enact this play, and the play is best done in possession of knowledge of her wisdom particles. Jnana matras. See, it's an ancient teaching that hasn't really got much of a focus today yet, but Vivekananda wanted it to have a focus. Oh, they don't know about tanmatras, you see. They don't know about prana and psychic prana yet. They're missing from their ideologies, their Western philosophies and psychologies, missing. No way to go inward without these. I'll show you those probably next week. And finally, origin of all particles, gross and subtle. So if you're looking just at the gross particles, you might run afoul and think about little kids blowing up things, see, and then scaring other people with them, dominating. It's called psychic power. See, it's the 8 occult powers. But if you know that there is a subtle mother to the particle, and that's called intelligence, then how can you do anything so antagonistic and so violent to the creation, and particularly to living beings who are more sentient than the creation? How can you do anything with such knowledge of such power? You'd treat it very gingerly and very carefully. You'd use it for, what did it say here? Transformation and enlightenment. So you take it in, ojas to tejas. Get good food, eat it, say the mantra over it first, then eat it. Extract pure prana from it, mukhya prana it's called. And then from that, these are the basics to it all, in almost any system. And then do your sadhana with that pure mukhya prana. You see, before you're doing your sadhana maybe with impure prana, from bad food, without mantra. Without mantra. Think about food and life and energy and action without this. Then think about it with it. That's what you need to do, see. To know that you're either in knowledge or in ignorance. That you're either with essence or stripped of essence. That you're either nourishing yourself on the real or on the unreal. And the proof is in the pudding. Your energy, your prana, your life with the ancestors, your family life, everything depends upon that distinction. So knowing the origin of all particles to be gross and subtle, then you would make a shift. Use the gross particles, take them inward. Sublimate them is the best word in English we have for that. It's rather a tantric kundalini teaching. Sublimate them, bring them up the spine. It doesn't just mean the physical spine. It means your subtle body. It has a spine too, so don't be spineless. Too many jellyfish in the ocean. And they can sting you and cause troubles too. I mean, as surfers we know that. So you want to find those substantial ocean-dwelling creatures called seers and saints, and receive the transmission of ojas, which is what comes from the process of food, mantra, and sadhana. Receive the ojas and take it to the tattva level, that is tejas, shining light. Does it make sense now? Streaming particles of intelligence is light from Brahman. Just like you nourish yourself in the sun. As a spiritual aspirant, you need to nourish yourself with the sun of Brahmakala and her streaming particles of living intelligence. You put yourself in that sun. Well, there's the meditator, and that pretty much summates the whole chart. The light of pure conscious awareness is where we ended up. Now, I could go to talk about ton mantras and psychic prana. I was thinking about that. I could go to talking about bijams, which is a powerful proof of intelligent particles, like the mala. Have you ever looked at your mala like this? Like each bead has a different god assigned to it? That's powerful. I found this in the Akshamalika Upanishad. Akshamalika Upanishad. It even tells you how to take your mala and bathe it in milk and curd and go through a whole process with it, like once a year, to purify it, to deify it, to enshrine it, and then concentrate each bead on a particular deity, like Ganesha, for instance, so the elephant of auspiciousness. So each bead you came to, you could do a sadhana of this, but this is just streaming particles. The beads you're holding are particles from a tree, and they're invested with a god. That god is her power. She oversees the gods, demigods, ancestors. With her streaming particles of intelligence, informs them. Luminaries and avatars flow off of her because of that. And if you're Jesus in the wilderness, you say, oh, I finally realized I and my Father are one. Or I realized this again here on earth, because I had to strip away the coverings that are here on earth in front of everyone to show them that this is the truth. I am the light of the worlds. He came out of the wilderness saying that. So the rishis thousands of years prior were saying, I'm the light of the worlds. I call them Gyanamantras. And she's the ocean of light. She and her divine consort Shiva. So I could go there. I could go to Tanmatra, psychic prana, particles, bijams. I want to do that next week because this chart is something that we want to probably take up the rest of the class with. We can introduce it before our break, which is, we still have some time, right? So in a half hour we can show you this chart, which I put a lot of thought into. Basically, I'm going here to what blocks streaming particles of living intelligence. Why aren't we feeling them? Well, some are. Geniuses, scientists, they've got an opening in their mind towards some higher wisdom. But that higher wisdom, India is still calling apara vidya. That apara vidya is very essential to the whole inward stepping process. However, the problem of it is that you're still making money from it. So that's a limitation, a possible impurity that can happen in it. And you're still doing so as if this lower knowledge was the only reality. You don't have a higher being informing you. And third, these are probably the Ashana trium of granthis, major granthis, two nadis, blocks in the way of this kind of flow, is that your ego wants to own what you do. And so in this way, you're going to have to be very careful if you get into aparavidya, lower knowledge. Paravidya, however, frees you from those. It would be nice, and probably isn't all that practical or probable in this day and age, called the Kali Yuga. It'd be very nice if you could start off first with awakening to your true nature, like Shankara did at 6. Some of these beings, it doesn't take them very long to come through the curtain of nescience. Well, maybe I should just read it. You see, it's my own quote because it's kind of hard to find sources for something so specific. But anyway, this chart is then called by the painful word of Vismriti. I mean, basically, you know, Smriti is a very powerful word. Ya Devi Sarvabhateshu Chaitaneti Abhidiyate Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhateshu Vishnu Mayati Shabdita Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Smriti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Namo Namaha. Chittiropena ya Kristade tatvapyastata jagad namastasyai 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 namo namaha. It goes on for 700 mantras long. And basically that one line I sang was Smriti Rupena Samstita. Samstita, steady, right? Chitti Rupena, in form, Rupena. Namastasya, I salute. I salute her who remains steady in me, in my mind, as divine memory. Smriti. What's happened to everyone that they've forgotten her? Vishmriti. So, taking a clue from my own thinking, as I didn't hear this from anyone else, although people have pointed me towards it in their own ways, I entitled this and envisioned this chart called The Dire Effects of Vishmriti, or subtitled Causes for Loss of Divine Memory Over Lifetimes. So a lot of talk in the Paravidya is about this, but the Aparavidya would go towards Alzheimer's, see, or something like that, and diabetes and various kinds of diseases we have, which Vashishta tells us all exist in the mind first before they come to the body. It's just basically, that's one of the greatest problems, and it's offset by keeping your discriminating wisdom as you come into the body. But the illumined minds project their crystallized mental complexes into numerous bodies over cycles of time. Why can we believe that? Because it should be known that primal energy of the One Supreme Being assumes various forms. Are we going to believe the great rishis like Svetashvatara? We should. So, unillumined minds project their crystallized mind complexes into numerous bodies over time. With the exception of souls possessing resilient memories, passing through the curtain of nescience between the realm of the ancestors and the earth plane strips all past life remembrances from them. Then once they get here, why can't they remember? One of my students is going like this, because Patanjali talked about parigraha and aparigraha as being one of the early steps in yoga, is that they're all directed toward the eternal money-making, is how Vivekananda put it. All directed toward the eternal money-making at a very early age. Who escapes that? Well, I've got this picture at home I've had for a long time of this old venerable Tibetan monk teaching these two little 4- and 5-year-old monks. See, basically the parents, let the monks have them. Must be important souls there, because usually they go looking for those souls. Will you give me your child, please? Oh, well, I guess so. Here, take it. See. And so I have 4 or 5 others. You can have this one. But that's the one we want. So they take it back. So those kinds of beings skip the eternal money-making. They're not routed towards parigraha, because it makes you forget what you just went through in their past lifetime. That's one of the first causes for Vishmriti, is that your last lifetime you weren't taught any higher. I mean, I have thought about this deeply, and there are some lists we need to go through in the rest of the class. So welcome to this Dharma teaching. I'm not going to even call it a theory. It's got to be aired out. Well, the quote above here just said that there's a curtain of nescience here. So this inner space scene is what I like to call it, is the Vakdevi is here, the Jagad Devi is here, goddess of the word, the goddess of the earth, and the Vakdevi, the goddess of the word, is here. And there's a big block between Maharloka and Burloka. See, Maharloka is even beyond the Loka of the ancestors. So Burloka really represents the 3 worlds. Bur, Bhuvaha, Swaha. May it sound familiar? May peace come to these 3 worlds, because those are the worlds of cycling. you're keeping bodies. You could say it this way: you haven't gone beyond your subtle body yet to your causal body, which beings are living in from Maharloka in. Taparloka is the realm of the rishis. Brahmaloka is the realm of the Trinity. Those are great souls that inhabit those spheres, and who also try and get beyond them. All 7 worlds are fraught with this problem of name and form, time and space. It just gets malleable, hard to determine, like the disorientation that happens when a soul arrives too quickly to a higher state of consciousness. It happens all right here. It also happens inside, in dream life, in deep sleep life. So I'm just explaining you basically the premise of this chart, because these 2 charts, I'd say I could have jumped to bijams and malams and all that kind of thing, but I wanted to jump to blockages, because we can entertain a thinking like this. You see streaming particles of living intelligence and say, oh, that sounds very good. Where are they? Show me to them. Can I have them now? See, and yes, you can if you take your food, get a mantra, practice, get some good energy, practice, and move inward. But what's keeping you from moving inward? Well, you can see below here the mind and its nadis. Basically, these nadis are major nadi for body-bound souls. They go along to earth and back. Samsara pragbara. So these nadis, spine and all that, is a physical representation of hundreds and thousands of nadis that go inward. Just like there are that many in your body too. Channels, veins, nerves. Inside of each one of those is 100,000 more that you can't see. They're not even in the physical. The physical is just an outer representation of the inner network of nerves. Sort of like looking at a couple big cities from a helicopter, seeing all the roads go to them. See, just like that, each center has millions and millions of nadis in which souls are flowing in and out of all the time. These are souls that, at the higher levels, know that there's no birth or death going on. There's just the assumption of movement, a kind of running a race in a dream, where you really go nowhere, as Gaudapada says. The runner runs a race in a dream, wakes up, didn't go anywhere. Other nadis are there, flowing down. Lower nadis for souls taking animal births. Got to provide for that. It's an important teaching for pet owners, for instance. It would be a deeper way of looking at how animals appear to be born and die and suffer and are not these wisdom particles are not consciously available to them, yet they are manifestations of it. And then, of course, nadis for plant-based entities going even further down. Those are basically prana, made of prana. Insects, plants, they're prana-based. So they'd be part of that insentient flow of seeds in and out. The animals and the humans, and of course the ancestors, a bit different. There you see what I just sang. Ya Devi Sarvabhutashu Shmiti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namo. Here you see, heading toward the Mahalorka, what I just chanted. Practicing meditation, they communed with the Devatma Shakti. So practicing the yoga of meditation, they found the Devatma Shakti. So this is what souls do who remember her and move towards beyond the curtain of nescience, which will strip you of remembrance of your past lifetimes otherwise, if you don't have her. So don't leave home without her. See? That's why I just mentioned Lord Vashishta. You know, the desire for rebirth begins in your mind. It's the first disease. I'm quoting him exactly. The first disease is rebirth. And if a person knows there's no birth and death, they're exempted from that. Oh, I'm just assuming, you see. So these others assume too much, knowing too little. But the great souls, they assume the truth, knowing that they're not the untruth or unreal. So that exempts them from saying, I'm born or I'm dying. Na mrityur na shanka, na me jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata ma janmaha, chidananda rupaha, shivoham shivoham. That great soul I just mentioned, Shankara, who remembered everything within a few years of being born. Even the scriptures of India, he recalled so much at 6 years of age and 8 and so forth. All someone had to do is remind him, his teacher, like that monk sitting with the two little monks. Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Oh, now do you remember this? Ah, yes. And they don't suffer samsara anymore. Their karmas can't stick to them. So why, he sings? Because namrityur na shanka name jati beda. I never had a death because I was never born. How can the birthless ever die? Gaudapada says. How do those and everything, all entities which are non-originated, ever have an end? If they had a birth or a creation or a beginning or a middle, then you could say they end. Well, those are then what they class the unreal, going through these cycles, including unillumined souls who have to come through that curtain of nescience every lifetime. Everything they learned in their past schooling is forgotten. And it has to somehow be primed again by some teacher at some level. And do they go anywhere with that knowledge, or is it going to be the same thing again, is the question. When am I going to awaken to streaming particles of a living intelligence? And not just be attached to the unreal and lower knowledge. That's the fate of beings, most of them on the Burloka, except for those whom we call saints and saviors and seers and so forth. So you can see my point then. From deeper within, there's a block as souls come through to the earth, Burloka. But the mind has the ability to open up to these higher worlds by learning to pierce through. Sound familiar? Because earlier I was just saying she penetrates everything, right? Isn't that what we said here? You see, she's capable. These particles are capable of penetrating through everything. So if you avail yourself, first you inform yourself of their presence, then you avail yourself of them and you use them and direct them inside. That's why we teach concentration first, in Siddhanga Yoga, Vedantic Yoga. If you can't understand that, go back to the early limbs of Ashtanga Yoga and get it together. But if you know that concentration is the end-all and be-all of restless mind, scattered mind, and the beginning of focused mind, and the beginning, therefore, of success in any kind of life you undertake, then you'll adhere to that and focus on it. So with the Vedanta cuts high, you see. Doesn't care about what's below. So that should have been taken care of already. Get thee behind me, Jesus said. But you're cutting now at a very high level, and you're after a very precious treasure. The pearl of great price is that one-pointed concentration using these precious divine particles, living particles, that you gained through practicing the fire of yoga, you see, and burnt through all coverings, penetrated through all impediments. So here they are, some of them. We can do this much before the break. Interpersonal causes for loss of memory that you're physically at least now calling Alzheimer's, because there are other physical causes for that too, but those physical causes for Alzheimer's are also found in the mind. And they can't be done away with by medicines. That's only treating the outer effect. And why is that? Because the body's aging. The brain's aging. But you're not the body or the brain. You're more like the mind and the Atman. So if I can't reach my brain, you see, this, as the saying goes, then, you know, then you're going to have to bypass it and you're going to have something that penetrates through everything that kept it in a limited condition for 60, 70, 80, 90 years. And then you can default to it, if you want to put it that way. I've seen that happen with elderly souls who are enlightened. They just shut off the brain and they just lived in a pleasant look on their face. They remembered what was important, what was true, what was beneficial, and what was uplifting, as the Upanishads say. So, giving it some thought, I'd say these are the main things that are the interpersonal causes for forgetting your divine nature, and the vehicles, you know, the streams, and the mother herself in any given lifetime. First, there's adharma. It's neglect in taking wisdom teachings in the previous lifetime. If you take them in this lifetime, you're already on the fast track towards enlightenment. How fast can you put them into effect? It would be the only question. Because Shankara, like that, you see. Vivekananda, like that, you see. Put everything that was unreal behind him and remembered the truth as soon as they were there. Found him, Vivekananda, the young Narendra, found his way to Sri Ramakrishna right away as a teenager. And then Sri Ramakrishna told him, "Did you know that I called you from another realm to come to earth?" And you don't think that made Vivekananda's intelligent particles stream? and his distaste for worldliness scream. He wanted out, and he had to suffer death of his father and various things, but he had the great master right nearby. There are songs written about this already. So neglecting taking wisdom teachings, you should do this right away and teach your children right away, these. Just like the monks would do. But there are some householder yogis that do that too. Oh, just learn this, my dear, you'll be fine. Trishna, thirst for the worlds of name and form. And in this case, basically Bur, Bhuvar, and Swahar, lokas, basically. The ancestors have that great thirst, and it's an addiction to them. The most addicting substance in the three worlds, I've always said, is what? Prana. So that makes everything enjoyable. If it's not there, it's just like clouds with no rain, you know. So, I mean, if the prana isn't there in the thing you like to eat, the thing you like to enjoy or touch or hear, then it's just insipid. There's no reason to be engaging that way at all. Get you behind me. And samskaras are there. Fixation with caste, conventions, and families. So that's how thirst for worlds of name and form play into those whom you're born with. For better or for worse. Or neutral, as the case may be. And then we already mentioned this one, parigraha, the illusion of earning, hoarding, and spending. It's a nice phrase I got out of one of the scriptures, was that Vivekachudamani. The illusion of earning, hoarding, and spending. Ishanatrayam, clinging to wealth, spouse, and offspring. When I was a young baby, I was attached to my mother's breast. When I was a young boy, I was attached to sport. When I was a young man, I was attached to a young woman. When I was an adult, I was attached to making money and my job. When I was an elderly man, I was attached to anxiety because death was coming near. But to the Supreme Brahman, I was never attached. Shankara, this 6-year-old prodigy, spiritually speaking, sang in his Bhaja Govindam, Mohamudgara, the hammer that pounds away at illusion and delusion. Sing this, learn this, pounds away at your delusion. Dukkha, belief in the substantiality or actuality of suffering. Suffering can be a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call for most beings. But if you have a habit around it, then of course it's a great barrier on all levels. Physical suffering, suffering of organs because of erratic prana, suffering of mind because of irregular thoughts, and suffering of intellect because of limitations of your own intellect. All of these things are going to require a prana that's flowing, a psychic prana, which we will look at. So it's the belief in a thing rather than the thing itself that's usually the problem. Like belief in wealth being the end-all and be-all of existence. That's the problem, not wealth itself. Sadurmi, I just mentioned that already. Hunger, thirst, grief, delusion, decay, and death. Those 6 transformations or 6 billows. They hit the soul hard while it's living in the body. And then they get conditioned by those. And then they take them past death into their next body. They hold them in the subtle body. They don't purify the subtle body with practices like mantra, bijams. It would be a good case here. And therefore, they become real to them, and they live by them. So families, living with families who are going through the same experiences you are, these kinds of conditionings are riddling the soul with holes. And so when it passes through the curtain of nescience, it just picks up more. Both directions. Some beings, they'll pass away from the body and they'll see the great light. You know, like Mathur Babu, they saw him pass away. Said, oh, they're coming for me. He saw the gods coming out of the ethers, carrying him away in a great carriage. And the devotees of Ramakrishna were looking on. They're so beautiful, you know. It's the difference between that kind of passing and a passing which just, you go to sleep. If not getting the soul torn out of the body by the devil with hot pincers. Extracted horribly. And I've seen that kind of death too. So basically, what's the difference between those two? Do you want to be like Shankara, saying, you know, I never had a death, so I could never be born. I never will have a death. So Sadurmi, get thee behind me. Jagat Mithya, it's like the Jagat Devi there, you see, assuming the world to be the only reality. So forget the other 6 chakras. Forget the higher 4 worlds. Maybe all I have then for me is heaven and hell. The furnace, the blast furnace of the basement of the house called Burloka, and the soot there that gets on my white clothes. The angels wonder when they come to earth. The celestials take on human bodies too. And they wonder where the soot came from. In heaven, they're used to these beautiful white garments. Call them wings or robes or whatever you like. Their subtle body is used to being pure and spotless. They come to earth and it's the furnace room. And they acquire these things. Sri Ramakrishna said, even if you have a little contact with wealth, that will cause a stain in your mind. Even a little contact with wealth. So then you better have something very powerful, if that's going to happen to you, to offset it, so that you can go beyond pleasure and pain. Like dukkha. Up here you could see sukha, you see, so I assigned that to the heavenly realms. Pleasure in heaven and dukkha on earth, pain. And then finally here, and we'll take our break, vikshepa, dull sleep, vacuous thought, empty speech, worldly sounds. People drive by. I went to the mainland recently, I was driving in a car, people drive by listening to the most ungodly things in their cars. Turn full blast. So the car itself is shaking. Their windows are all closed, but you can still hear it. So you like put it in reverse and try and back up, you see. Get away from them, you see. And they walk around with headphones on, listening to these ghastly sounds of words, vacuous words with empty speech that just come out of a state of dull sleep, just dull sleep. Like I saw it today looking on the computer. Oh, this particular rapper has reached enlightenment. I went, what the hell? Are you kidding me? Enlightenment, oh, I suppose you read on, it means got money from his records, you see. So fine, more power to you. But if you're a spiritual seeker, silence is golden, and it's the first doorway into yoga with her, with the divine being. First door of 7, according to the beings we're singing about here, studying their teachings and all that. So I like that definition of vikshepa. Dull sleep, vacuous thought, empty speech, and worldly sounds. It's from the Vivakuchitamani, basically. He says, give up all that, and give up music, he says. For a musician, that was a good thing to hear, you see. Give up music. So, of course, he meant worldly music, not divine music. Well, you've seen the curtain of nescience as filled out by this particular Dharma teacher, as what some of the main barriers are. There are probably many more, which keeps streaming particles of living intelligence from penetrating to the Burloka for a greater percentage of human beings living here in bodies. So we'll take that into our break and return in 15 minutes.